Cham, today we're talking about exactly what it takes to grow a creator business from scratch to the hallowed promised lands of 100K a month. It's that mystical milestone that puts you in that 7-figure run rate territory. It's something that a lot of creators dream about, but they struggle to get a really clear vision of what the road ahead looks like. And the biggest mistake people make is failing to make it through a period that I call the leverage trap. This is where you feel like you're not making any progress and you end up giving up before actually making it into the leverage payoff, where all of a sudden your inputs compound and honestly things just start to get easy. And if you're new here, hey, I'm Tom Youngs, and for the past 2 years I've been documenting my journey here on YouTube, growing my creator business from zero in July 2023 all the way through to where I'm at now. Recently hitting a record 161K month in my solo consulting business. And I did it without sales calls, without a sales team, and only spending a few $1,000s on ads. And honestly, the cool thing is I made a video back in August 2023 sharing my exact plan about how I was going to do it. And since then, I've been doing what all those nerds talk about, the whole building in public thing. And on that note, if you're also a creator looking to start or maybe scale a micro education business, I've got a free Skool community where you'll find a bunch of resources and a free mini course breaking down the exact model that I've used over the past 2 years. The link's down in the description. But last week, someone who I met at a mastermind a couple of months ago in Dubai, he told me that he's been binging my videos. Shout out, you know who you are. But he couldn't find one where I broke down all of the steps that I've taken to get here now. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact timeline and the exact steps that I've taken over the past 2 years so you can also make it through to the leverage payoff, getting you to a point where you truly live the life of your dreams. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so first let's just define what I call the leverage trap. So this is really a period of time which I've typically seen around 2 to 3 years where creators, and myself included, I went through this period. Life feels really hard. Everything, all of the signals, all of the evidence, everything suggests that this isn't going to work out for you. And what you have to do is you need to navigate this period, which, like I said, typically is around 2 years. It was 2 years for me. So I started my business here. So kind of on this axis here, we've got time, and then we have results, kind of money on the left-hand side. Now, what happens is when we start building our business, we find ourselves in a position where we are putting individual inputs into the system. I make one video, I expect one result. I make one cold DM, I expect one response or a certain percentage of responses from cold outreach, cold DMs, posting content. And in that first period, we are essentially doing like linear work. So one input in is one input out. And that's why, like, when people start out, you'll get a lot of people who, a lot of coaches say, okay, the best place to start when you're starting out is do things which have linear work, linear outputs, which are send more messages, get more results. Now, that the truth is that absolutely works. And that is to some extent the way it has to be at the beginning. So during this 1 to 2 year period, or kind of like, I would say 2 to 3 year period where you're having to put lots of inputs in, you might not get many inputs out. So your income is going to be lower. You're going to be having to make sacrifices. Your content's not going to be performing as well. But what you need to do is you need to get to this point of escape velocity where you then manage to get into the leverage payoff, which is where your work has compounded and the inputs that you have made, especially leveraged inputs. Making videos like this, YouTube videos are an example of leveraged work. You put more and more energy into these, and then eventually you reach the leverage payoff, which is where you've hit escape velocity. Things start to get easier because things have suddenly compounded. And the reason really why things compound is that this first 2 to 3 years is what it takes to get to a level of mastery that the majority of your market don't have because they've all quit during the leverage trap period. So you just have to understand that during this first two years, your output is going to be lower in terms of how much inputs you are putting into the system. So expect to have to post more content, expect to have to post more consistently, more frequently, send more messages, be on more calls, expect this period to be challenging, but then you get to hopefully where I'm at, which is kind of in the leverage payoff. This is where you want to get to, and that's what we're going to talk about, the exact roadmap that has taken for me to get to where I'm at now, where my inputs have compounded to a point where now things are relatively easy for me to get clients, for me to grow my business, to get views on videos, to post content, to do all the stuff that I've done. It's because I've been through this period. Okay, so let me just give you a bit of a background into my story and kind of where I've been before, because I think it's really important to understand where I've been to get to the point where I am now. So today is the 23rd of June, 2025. So 4 years ago, I was working full-time as a funnel analytics consultant, working for a big software business. And my job was to work with our clients to help them understand how they can make their funnels operate better. So I worked across a massive spectrum of businesses, big enterprise businesses. So I worked across banking, retail, luxury, travel. So Selfridges were in here twice. But ultimately that's supposed to be, I think Harrods is another multi-brand luxury retailer that I worked with. So Selfridges, Chanel, Superdry, Tommy Hilfiger, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Holidays, NatWest, Lloyds, TSB. These were a selection of some of my clients that my job was to work one-on-one with their teams to really just understand like how they are going to improve their funnels to optimize for revenue. So I would work with their digital teams. I would work with their content teams, with their e-com teams, with their advertising teams. I would literally work with all of their teams, their analytics teams. And my job would be to help them find where there were gains to be made within their businesses. And really that was like, it was this job that kind of like built the skills that eventually I've got to now, which is where I'm here on the internet talking about how funnels for creators are fucking dumb. And they are not the way to build a creative business. It's not how I've built my business. I've been working in the online space for a while. So before this, I was there for like a couple of years. And then I was like, okay, it's time for me to have my own thing. So I went to a colleague of mine and I was like, hey, we work with a bunch of e-com businesses as kind of like consultants. Why don't we try and do it ourselves? We know how to do this. We can do this. And so that's when in 2022, so this is where I tried my first kind of like stint in online business, where I launched an e-commerce business. I got into $30,000 worth of debt. I bought a bunch of beauty products and we tried to launch this e-com business. And then all of a sudden, after about kind of 9 months of me being like, okay, I need to go all in on this. So I quit my job, went all in on this, and 9 months later, we didn't have any money and it was an absolute fail. And I ended up in 30K of debt, which I think is a really common, honestly, is a common first step for people in online business. They try drop shipping, Amazon FBA, e-com, because it's like, okay, it's simple, right? I just need to buy a product and sell it for a higher price. And it's simple until you realize that like e-com, until you've got economies of scale, which require like shit tons of product, shit tons of money put into advertising. We're talking like tens of thousands of dollars per day into advertising. You ain't making jack shit on those margins, which are typically around like 40%. So that was my first kind of introduction into online business. But I learned a ton about advertising. I learned a ton about products, kind of like just real fundamentals of business. Even though it was technically a failure, I learned a ton through doing this. And that's when I moved on to my next thing, which was running a consulting and kind of agency business. So I started off just doing solo consulting myself. I was helping businesses with kind of just one-off projects, then bumped into a couple of people who are doing something similar. And then we were like, let's start an agency. And for about a year and a half, we were building bespoke communities online. And we were kind of doing done-for-you services, social media consulting, helping people grow their brands on Twitter, helping them launch communities and run communities. And that was when we were kind of doing, as an agency, we were earning between 20 to 50 grand a month. But the problem was between 3 co-founders, and after we had paid our team, there wasn't really much money left over at the end of the month to be able to pay ourselves. And this was when my life was frankly the hardest it had ever been. And it got to the point where we were doing well with some of our clients, but I was like, this is just not what I want to do. So what I did was I took a couple of my clients that I was helping at the agency, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just break off and I'm going to help you myself. And that was when I was doing done for you funnels, email marketing, community building, and really helping individual creators grow their business. So people who had creators who had large audiences already, I was helping them as essentially like a growth operator, which is kind of quite typical now. It's quite a typical like first step in. Really, what was the big inflection point for me was when I actually invested in my first mentor. And this would have been kind of August time, 2023. And life was really tough. I frankly was broke. And I left the agency and I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own thing. And that's where I started CreatorLaunch. And it's kind of really funny because if you go on my channel, this channel, you scroll back to August 2023, you will see my case study from the agency that the client that I took over, helped him grow his business. And then the next video was like, okay, this is the exact game plan I'm going to ride for the next 2 years to grow my business to the levels what I've got to now. Kind of cool because, to be honest, if you go back and watch that video, it's exactly what I did. And I think that that's like kind of sick. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to launch my own thing. But I recognized that firstly, I didn't have any money. And so to be able to pay for this mentor, I got a part-time job working 10 hours per week, working for these guys, the it's Paperboy Studio, and they are a newsletter agency, the sister agency of Kit. So Nathan is the founder of Kit, used to be ConvertKit. Some of you will be familiar with Sahil Bloom. So he's also one of the co-founders of that agency, really big newsletter, big creator and author. And then Shane was the boss who I'd been following for a while. And I really wanted to learn how to build systems and run a business like Shane. And Shane is a complete turbo nerd when it comes to systems, and working for him, just doing 10 hours per week, allowed me to firstly pay for my mentor, but it also allowed me to really learn the ropes and kind of see what it takes to build a business like this. And so at that point, I was earning about 5K per month. I could pay for my mentor, which is 2K per month. And I just had enough money to be able to pay for my bills and my rent. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to launch a beta cohort. So at the time, my only real audience was on Twitter. So I was building my audience on Twitter. I was doing the classic thing of trying to post everywhere. So I was trying to take my Twitter posts, turn them into carousels, post them on my Instagram account, post them on LinkedIn, post them on TikTok. I was trying to do fucking everything. And of course, nothing was actually gaining any traction because I just lacked focus. So what I did was I had an audience of around like 9,000 followers on Twitter. So not huge. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to get on networking calls. And this was before I'd learned anything about sales. This is before I'd done any like kind of hard training when it comes to growing an online business. And what I did was I went to my network on Twitter, and I literally just asked to get on networking calls with like as many people as possible. And over the course of around kind of like, I guess like 2-3 weeks, I must have got on about 60 calls with people in my audience, and there was no intent to sell them anything. I literally just wanted to like meet people and see what could happen. Turns out what I was doing was I was doing market research, and all of those calls allowed me to highlight what were the big problems that people were struggling with as early creators, beginner creators trying to grow audiences. And I was like, well, I guess I've kind of done this a little bit. And it goes back to this idea of you want to help the people who are just behind you. So I could quite literally help the people who hadn't grown any audience, hadn't sold any products. And I was like, well, I've kind of done all of this stuff. I guess I can teach you. So what I did is I launched the first product that I ever had, which was the beta cohort called Project Stealth, which was for 15 clients. And it was a group kind of cohort type of experience. It was 12 weeks, cost $395. And the whole aim of this was to get proof of concept and testimonials. Really, it was to help people get results and to get testimonials from kind of these clients. And what I did was I went back to everyone that I spoke to on those calls, and I sent them a message, sent them either a voice note or a video saying, "Hey, by the way, awesome to meet you a couple of weeks ago." And I hadn't planned this, by the way. I was just like, okay, this is my warm network. I went back to my warm network and was like, hey, I'm launching this thing in 2024 in a few months' time, which was what I eventually launched. And I was like, it's going to be like $4,000. It's going to be a 12-month coaching program to help people scale and kind of start and scale their businesses. And what I'm doing, though, over the next kind of 3 to 4 months is I'm going to do a beta run of this. And you can start for like 10% of the cost of what it's eventually going to be. So essentially I was like, hey, it's going to be 4K in like 4 to 6 months time. You can start now for 400. So I gave a really good incentive for people to start. I had 15 people start. And the really cool thing is that like a handful of them ended up kind of, again, becoming full clients of mine and still working together now, still been working together for like 2 years now, which is absolutely sick. So really cool. Now for that, I was building, I was hosting my community on Telegram, and there was a kind of like a Telegram channel there. It was kind of like a DM channel. I also had Discord. I really probably only needed one of those at the time, but I had 2 of those. I honestly don't know why, but Discord would have been perfect for that. I think people, though, didn't use Discord as much. I used it because it was free and I was kind of familiar with it a little bit. And people were more familiar with a messaging app. So for people who are just starting out like this, my recommendation is start with one messaging solution, and that would be either WhatsApp or Telegram, and then have a resource hub, which at the time Skool wasn't on my radar. And so what I would recommend is have Skool for your resources, which is what I do now, and then have a messaging app like WhatsApp, Telegram, or now what I use, which is Slack. But Slack is incredibly expensive. My bill for Slack is like $1,000 a month at the moment. And so you can get away with using like Discord. Discord is an amazing option for that. I know a bunch of creators use that for that, and it's basically free compared to Slack. So don't think that Slack is the answer. It's just the way I've gone. So that's kind of what I did until 2024, and then I launched my first what I call like one-on-one synchronous consulting. So I had 20 clients. I built 20 clients over the course of about 9 months, so around 3, 4, 5 clients a month, very steadily for until September. And this is where I would get on one-on-one bi-weekly calls, half-an-hour calls with the clients for 6 months. And it cost between 4K to 7.5K for that 12 months for my clients. I hosted my community on Slack, and then I hosted my resources, which I still use to this day. All of my resources for private and free resources are all in one Skool community. So I was the first one that kind of was like, wait, why are you guys splitting Skool communities, having a paid one and a free one? I was like, you can literally payment gate these stuff and you can manually and unlock things for, it was so dumb. And so now all of a sudden, all of these people are now starting to only use one Skool community. I was like, you guys are dumb. I don't know why you guys ever split up. Just to give you a context of where I was, where my kind of like, my audience was at. So my audience at the time was about 6 to 9,000 it grew from 6 to 9,000 during those months on Instagram. So I focused on Instagram for short form content and YouTube, and then email. And then I think by around August, I had about 500 emails on my email list. So that's what I took to get to essentially this time last year. So a year ago. And then this is when I had my next big inflection point, which was investing in my second mentor. And this is where we got on a one-on-one call with him, which is what I do with all of my clients. And he helped me highlight what was the biggest constraint in my business. And at the time, my Instagram was starting to really take off. YouTube was starting to also kind of track upwards. And I was starting to get a load of emails based on my Flywheel that I built. And that was when my mentor was like, you need to stop making content. I was like, what do you mean? And keep in mind that this mentor was someone he's got 2 YouTube channels. One has got 300,000 subs on, and the other he posts every single day on his podcast. I'm racing him, by the way. So he's aiming to get to 1 million subs, and I'm aiming to get to 100,000 subs. So we're having a race. And, wait, what was it? I can't remember. We've got a bet that's going on, but I can't remember what we said. Anyway, I'm racing him. We're going to see what happens. This was another big inflection point. And again, this is where it's like following a proven process and having clarity from someone to tell you this is what you need to focus on, stop spending time on long form content. So for this period of time, basically September to November, December, I didn't make long form content. I didn't put any real effort into long form content for about 8 to 12 weeks. So I posted a couple of videos here and there just to keep my audience being like, hey, why did you I didn't want them to think, I didn't want you guys to think I'm just dipping on you. So that was when I launched Scale20. So all of this work that I put in before to get case studies and build resources to understand really a proof of concept of what works and what doesn't work, I got to this point and I was like, you know what, I've seen enough. I can turn this into something absolutely incredible. I made some big assumptions and bets around how to structure a growth accelerator type of experience consulting program like this, completely turbocharge things. And so that's why I do things completely differently to what is kind of typical. And I made my version 1 of Scale20. This is then when I went to the market. I stopped then taking sales calls in September 2024, so about 9 months ago. And then this is really when things started to take off and I started to enter that leverage payoff period. So very quickly from September to December, my audience started to really snowball. I posted a 6-part mini series on my YouTube channel, which picked up a ton of steam. I got a video, the first video of that series went essentially viral for a online business video. And that's when I kind of went to 50,000 on Instagram. My goal for the year was to get to 50,000 on Instagram by December 31st. I missed that goal by 1 day. So I went from like 6,000 at the beginning of the year to 49,000 and like 700 on the 31st of December. It was actually mad. I hit it on the 1st of January. And then I also doubled my goal of YouTube. So my goal to get to YouTube was just to get to 10,000 subs on YouTube, but I managed to double it. So that was a really cool goal to hit. And then I managed to get to 10,000 emails for the first time by the end of the year. At that point, this was when I started building my initial founding members for Scale20. So I went to the market and said, hey, I'm offering a founding members opportunity until I reach 77 founding members for Scale20, which I reached a few weeks ago. And for that, what I did was I introduced my first kind of like my first asynchronous consulting offer. So the majority of my clients do asynchronous consulting with me. So most of them are asynchronous, which means they can ask me questions whenever they want. In our private community in Slack, we have kind of a one-on-one blueprint call when they can action that whenever they want, whenever they feel like they need it. And then the rest of the time is like I answer their questions asynchronously, whether it's through voice notes, just writing messages or Looms or whatever it is, guiding them that way. And then I only now have spots for 5 people to do synchronous consulting. So this is where I hop on calls and I only cap this to 5 people to be able to really focus my time and energy on making content for my clients, helping answer their questions, helping them move faster, really testing things and helping them really speed run things with AI. And that's been a big focus of mine. And so I only have 5 people. I've actually only got 3 people at the moment. So I've got 2 spots available, which really are only for the right people at the right time. And this offer looked like 4 to 10K for 12 months based on payment plans. So there would be a paid in advance option, which was between 4 to 6K, kind of laddered it up over the kind of like the last 9 months. And then it was 16,000 for 12 months of synchronous one-on-one consulting. So again, this is where I was hosting this on Slack and Skool, so haven't changed. And this took me to the kind of like the period, which was now kind of like here, which is where we're at now. We're at kind of like June, halfway through 2025. So this is what things look like now. So again, I only have 5 synchronous one-on-one clients, actually only 3, but I've got space for up to 5. And then everyone else is asynchronous consulting. And really what my next milestone is to build this to 150 people. And so right now my offer looks like it's either 16K for the full year or 22,000 if they do a rolling monthly payment. So at the moment it's $1,800 per month, but they can pay it in full at $16,000. They don't have to pay it in one chunk. They can like chunk it up into like small little payments because most people's cards don't allow giant payments like that. So if you're interested in paying it off, I give my clients 30 days to be able to activate the paid in advance savings and then pay me in advance. And then for my one-on-one synchronous consulting, currently it's 20,000 for 6 months of one-on-one synchronous consulting. With that, they also get the additional 6 months of Scale20. So they get the 6 months of one-on-one synchronous consulting with me, and then they get an extra 6 months after that. Now, the question is like, who really is the right fit for synchronous one-on-one consulting? To be honest, it's not something you need until you've got to $50,000, at least $30,000 to $50,000 a month. You absolutely do not need one-on-one coaching or consulting to get to to get to $50,000 per month. I didn't need it. I had like one call with a mentor in September. The rest I've just done with asynchronous kind of like coaching programs where I can ask questions. So really this is for people who are looking to get to that 7-figure, that 150K per month, which I've done. So again, hosting that on Skool and Slack. And so, yeah, that's ultimately it. So that gives you an idea of like, it's taken me. So if we go back to kind of like, it's taken me from this moment where I launched CreatorLaunch, so in the midway through 2023 to nearly midway through 2025, it's taken me about kind of 20 months to go from essentially zero here to my record month was 161K in April, just I think about 6 weeks ago. And that's what the roadmap has looked like. So like I've just got some lessons here. And I think the big one to remember is that like this period of time, growth isn't going to be linear. It's not just a straight line that goes up like that. It is going to be periods of scaling followed by periods of consolidation. Typically what happens is things reach a breaking point or there's a constraint in the business where you need to kind of open that constraint for the energy to flow through the system again. That's what my mentor helped me with last year. He was like, hey, this is your problem. Content isn't your problem. Leads isn't your problem. Conversion is your problem. You need to spend time having conversations, can close more people, and then you're going to get more cash in, and then you'll be able to reinvest that cash into scaling systems, which is what I'm reinvesting into now. And so you're going to have this like up and down kind of like roller coaster, and like that's cool. That's how growth happens. And over time, it looks linear, but it's supposed to be a roller coaster. And so I would just say finish up on like kind of the big lessons here for me. So number one is don't chase scale, chase results for your clients. This is the biggest lesson that I've learned is the people who are always just trying to chase scale, they are always on this hamster wheel. And it's like, no, scale is a result of you getting results for your client. Okay, that's how it works. Don't expect linear growth. As I said, true growth is going to be up and down. Aim to be the best in your market. This is without a doubt the very best way for you to actually kind of like, to grow. And if you are one of those people who is interested in being the best in your market, that is literally what I focus on with Scale20. We are here. We are the winners factory. We are helping people become top 1%, top people in their market. If you want to find out more, just go DM me on Instagram. I'll send you the details. You need to be patient for 2 to 3 years of building and that's what it takes to get to that leverage payoff period. So understand that. Know 3 levels of staying on the same offer, serving the same people, helping them get the best results, evolving your offer over time, but staying in the same lane, not just chopping and changing and going from one offer to another. That's what it actually takes to build mastery in a certain skill. And that's actually what it takes to get to that leverage payoff. The reason I was able to grow to grow to this level is that I stayed on the same path for like 2 years. I didn't chop and change my offers. I didn't go serve this person and then this person and then this business type and then this business type. My ideal customer profile, my perfect future clients stayed the same for 2 years. And then the final lesson is helping people go from 1 to 100 is 100 times easier than 0 to 1. So what that means is that if you're helping beginners you're going to have a harder time convincing them to take a bet on themselves by going all in. People who are just starting, typically more risk averse. It is way easier to help people who have already got traction in things, because they can know that where they're going. They know what is going to happen when they put inputs into a system. And so that's something to think about when you're crafting your offer. So that is it. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you get a clear idea of exactly what the path ahead could look like for you. But it is important to understand that it's totally cool if your road looks different to mine. Everyone I work with in Scale20 is a slightly different business, and I just provide them with the systems and the guidelines that I've used to build mine. Then it's up to them to choose what makes sense for them. If you want to learn about the exact model that I've used to grow to over 100K months without all the BS that you've tried before, go watch this video over here where I break it down. Right, that was sick. I'll see you in the next one.